Happy Women's Day, Sapna.
Day today, I bring to you a candid conversation with the women leaders that have achieved success and credible status in their own respective fields. So let's begin the proceedings of the day with a brief introduction of Realty Plus.
Some people are born to show the world which path to choose in a crisis. Some brands are born to do the same. And during the times of challenge, the stalwarts of the Indian real estate industry have chosen to do just that. By showing others the way to finding opportunities even amidst a crisis. By showing the world how to go about delivering on promises even amidst adversity. Success doesn't just happen. It happens by design. By pushing the boundaries, by raising the path. It takes days to develop a vision and nights to make it a reality. Knowing that pictures are worth 1,000 words and that every word makes a difference. It's doing the research, trusting your instinct, and finishing what you started. For the past 19 years, Realty Plus has been turning obstacles into opportunities, keeping the industry informed on the latest developments. Innovating to inspire debates and discussions. Bringing forth the perspectives of the industry leaders. Honoring hard work and achievements. Keeping the industry connected. This is what we are built on. This is what we are building. We are Realty Plus, and we lead the way.
So this was a brief snippet of what Realty Plus does and what are our latest initiatives. For those who are just getting associated with us, do get in touch with Ms. Tripti, Kedia, publisher in business at Realty Plus, to know more about what Realty Plus is doing and is planning to do. Let me also inform you all, the session is being live streamed on the Realty Plus website, www.rprealtyplus.com, Realty Plus Facebook and Realty Plus LinkedIn page. So coming back to today's special edition of Realty Plus Real Talk, let's take forward the theme of this year's UN Women's Day, which is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. Time and again, industry reports, global research have suggested that firms with greater gender diversity among senior leadership perform better. But they have also pointed out the economic disparities between men and women, and not just in India, but globally. There is no denying that men and women are different physically, mentally, and emotionally, but that also means that they have their own unique sets of strengths and weaknesses. The question is, how do we utilize the strength of half of the population of India, which is the woman? So let me bring on the virtual stage of the eminent speakers of today to shed light on why and how to invest in women and inspire inclusion. So let me bring on stage and welcome our speakers. Firstly, Anshu Sarin, CEO of 91 Springboard, a C-level travel and hospitality executive who has worked in hotel and airline industries in India. And as CEO of 91 Springboard, Anshu is dedicated to maximizing the company's success while prioritizing its best interests. Our next speaker, let me introduce Bhavana Bindra, Managing Director, India, Middle East, and Africa, the Lubrizol Corporation. With more than 20 years of experience in various roles, she's responsible for leading the India, Middle East, and Africa leadership team to deliver differential regional growth as well as holding accountability for Pune Global Capability Center. Our next eminent speaker, Nidhi Marwah, Group Managing Director, South Asia and Middle East for the Executive Center, has a career that has spanned more than 25 years in the hospitality and premium real estate industry. She manages a large team across different regions, and from one woman army to an actual army, Nidhi has overseen the growth of the Executive Center in India, Sri Lanka, and most recently, the Middle East. Finally, our next speaker, Sarina Menezes, Oberoi Realty's Head and VP of Brand Marketing and Corporate Communication, has seamlessly integrated brand building strategies and demand generation techniques, showcasing her exemplary leadership in prioritizing customer-centric operations. And she comes with 30 years of marketing excellence experience. So this is our eminent panel, and before we start with the discussion and I ask my speakers their views and opinions, let me start by citing one very recent survey that I just read yesterday only, which says 63% of women in Bharat, which means rural and urban, aspire to start their own businesses, which reflects a strong desire for financial independence and self-reliance. So from our speakers, I would like to know, given your professional and personal experience, how much do you agree? Is there that latent desire among women? We are not talking about even the corporate sector, but across the country, there is that desire for financial independence and self-reliance. Anshu, starting with you.
I think there is, it is the most important thing that is there. And I'm going to give a personal anecdote to that. I'm started with a very, very candid side of it. I don't know if that's how you want it, but I'm just saying it as it comes from the heart. So a few years back, I was going through turmoil in my married life, many years back actually. And my dad, we're three sisters, and my dad said, I'm the youngest in our family, and my father said to me that, you know what, no matter what goes through in the life, and he didn't even know actually that I was having this problem. He says, just be financially independent. And he started off by saying things about, don't overspend on your cards. You should spend as much as you can earn, blah, blah, blah. But those words have always stuck with me because no matter how I've traversed in life, just the fact that I have always been financially independent has made a whole lot of a difference. Don't forget the fact that when you mentioned very nicely the aviation part of my history, it also meant that I went bankrupt with Kingfisher Airlines, and which was also the time that I got divorced. And the point is that even at that point of time, this is the only thing that kept me going. That you need to be absolutely financially secure and be able to get back. And if that confidence remains, then there is just a whole lot differently that you can approach the world and just yourself, because that gives you that worth and the capability of doing it. I see today in a lot of other forums that I'm a part of, where there is a whole lot of work. For example, this platform called Lakshmi, which a friend of mine has started, which do stuff for getting women to become financially independent. And they may have been savvy, they may not have been savvy, but just that financial independence just gives you the ability to be yourself. And I think that's really the point. It's not about breaking barriers, doing different things, being solo and all of that, but it just allows you to be yourself.
That's true. I completely agree. Bhavna, what would you like to add to that? As Anshu said, it's not just about financial independence or just being yourself. It's much more than that.
Yes, exactly. It's that was the only thing I would add, and Anshu very well explained with a lot of heart being talked about on that. I think it's a little beyond. So maybe we see a lot of this data on women in a certain income bracket taking more decisions relative to those at a lesser income bracket. So I may be financially independent, but in a household that traditionally in the patriarchal system has been used to, the male figure as driving the decisions, it seems it is natural that a woman which is at a much higher level of independence, just to talk monetarily, seems to have a bigger or louder say on decision making. And I think that is a big part of what starts with financial independence, but it is where we need to get to. And I think we are lagging behind on that as a country. I cannot speak about other regions, but as a country, there is still a very minuscule portion of women who perceive themselves as the final decision makers. And the cutoff with the data that I have seen is a very high sum of income that you bring to the table, which allows you to have a say in that decision making. So the journey is begun. There's a desire to be independent. There is a significant move towards financial independence, but to drive decision making, which is then what also reflects in the corporate sector, which I guess all of us here are a part of, will be a little more time and effort and persistence, is what I'd like to add.
That's correct. Earning money and being able to earn, that does not ensure that you have financial independence. As you rightly said, how much say do you have in the family's financial decisions is where, again, the challenge comes in. Nidhi, how do you look at it?
I think it boils down to the fact that do you have a seat at the table or do you have a voice at the table? There is, and for a woman, I think for me, it is a question of two things: choice and control. If I can drive those two in my life, I am a happy person. And therefore, I multiply the happiness around me. That sense of contentment is with these two things. So it's important financially, no two ways about it. Absolutely with you on this, Anshu and Bhavana. But money matters a lot, buys a lot of happiness as well. But I think the choice of it all, the control of it all, the understanding of it all is important. It doesn't come easy to anybody. And I'm again not talking genders. But still, if you see in India, there's just 20% of the total entrepreneurs who are women, 80% are men. Even if you see the funding boards, the constitution of men versus women there is always tilted towards the men. So yes, a lot of work to be done over there. But the fact that we are having these kinds of conversations instead of just talking about what women should do as a career start, and now we're talking of financial steering of not just house but also businesses, that's a great start.
Right. I think we have come a long way. And as you said, our conversations have evolved. And very rightly put, choice and control. That is where, women, that is what women wants. So, Sarina, your last words on that.
Sure. So I come from two industries, and both are heavily male dominated. That's the real estate and hospitality, which means we work with very young people. And I have seen a huge influx of women entering into the workforce in the last 5 to 8 years. I mean, a recent report this week showed that the numbers have gone up to 40%. And I would think the majority of the women that we have here in Oberoi Realty are below the age of 40. And in hospitality, it's very obvious that they are at the younger age group. Now, I think if there is any change that has to take place, so you have to influence any change, that has to happen at the grassroots level. So I am very a part of Manipal University. I visit there as an adjunct faculty, and I was there last week. And I could see that if you if education can give women the confidence, and it does, and I don't mean your basic education but higher education, it gives women the confidence to look within themselves, uh, evaluate their strengths, evaluate their talents, wanting to make that difference, and it's easy for us to talk on these platforms. But I think it's very important for us to go to these grassroots platforms where the minds are being molded, they are being developed for the future, and encourage these young women to build a career for themselves and to stay in their careers and to be financially strong and work towards a career that would make them financially independent. So I see a lot of very talented women here at our workplace, but and they want to be independent, they want to be financially independent, they want to contribute to the household income. And I think that is something that we should definitely encourage, which will build their confidence into then taking up being independent, and even take up leadership roles, where that's where we lose the girls.
That's right. You rightly said. It is, at the educational level. That is where we have to start probably sensitizing them how it can make a difference. But the sad reality is also that, I come from an architectural background. Majority of the entire class is girls in an architectural school. But then hardly there are who have their own practices. That's the sad reality of they are all educated, they are architects, and they are and but we have hardly have design firms being headed by women architects. So that brings me to the next question, and again I will cite some figures that only 10% of Fortune 500 companies are led by women. Still better figures than last year, which was only 7 to 8%, and now we have grown another 2-3% to 10%, but still a minuscule number. And not to forget, many of them are family-led organizations. In India, as our speaker mentioned, that only 20% are women entrepreneurs, which means 80 men are the entrepreneurs, and only 20 women in comparison are women entrepreneurs. We do say, you need support at personal and professional level, but is there also a risk aversion among women to become an entrepreneur? Nidhi, let me take it from you. You are an entrepreneur. So do you think that women also need to get over that risk aversion factor or aspect?
Do we really think that women are risk averse, or just our thoughts about them are?
I mean, is that one of the factors that they like to stay safe and not take risk in terms of becoming an entrepreneur, because that involves that?
Okay, so if you're talking biases, have you ever seen a man walk? I'm generalizing. Man walk into the kitchen and try his hand at making some very basic food. They're risk averse as well. It is just that we have allocated the outer world risks to them. And inside the home, where it is considered a safe haven, is where we think that here the woman can run the show. But outside, let's not have her step outside and run the world. So I don't agree with that women are risk averse. I do think, however, that they do a great balancing act in balancing, risks and their exposure to the risks. So if you're asking me that women do not want to themselves venture out, Beti Bachao doesn't end at birth. You have to give the girl a good shot at life, and that shot doesn't stop only with education, which plays a great part, but there is also a value alignment that has to happen, and that happens at home. So, we've seen the disparities in certain segments of the society wherein the son is given a different set of things to do at home. I'm not talking education. He's told to go out and get the bread, and the girl is said, okay, once he gets the bread, please make the jam sandwich at home. No, let's flip this. No, why are we not striving to make the world a safer place if that is what it means to let the woman be out? So then what we should be focusing on is the safety of the human walking on the street. You're talking of a boardroom. We invented the all the board games in India, and you're telling me that, and they all are played in the house, at home, in a safe environment, and you're telling me we can't go out and capture the world. So I don't agree with that. But yes, it's a huge project, and therefore we need the entire village to stand up and support that project.
That's right. Change of mindset. It has to start from there. Bhavana, what do you have to say? Why the figures are so low when we are talking about women entrepreneurs?
So, I have forgotten the figure of women in workforce at senior levels. I don't know if that ratio is too different from
They are
women
different. Yeah.
entrepreneurs,
They
right?
they still have better percentage there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it isn't like huge double-digit deltas between those two. So
Correct.
the way, honestly, someone once asked me, someone very close to me, ironically a male, who asked me, he's like, how do you take decisions of moving from where you are? And he was talking about how he was struggling. He's like, I just can't figure out, when do you decide, okay, it's time to move? Or when do you decide something else just seemed more exciting? And I gave my reasons on why and when I decide to unearth myself from wherever I may have grown roots, which hopefully doesn't happen. Um, but to me, being an entrepreneur or being in the workforce, I think that's a very personal preference. Let us not connect it with risk aversion, to be very honest, right? For me, when I was asked in that same conversation on why I wouldn't choose to be an entrepreneur, I said, that's probably a preference on where I think I can bring in maximum value while feeling happy about it. Maybe I didn't chance upon an idea which I thought nobody was doing anything about, or I didn't feel passionate about something. And maybe I have felt that I bring in more value picking things up when someone has brought it to a certain level and then running with it beyond that. Could be anything. So for me, the whole connect with risk aversion is a little bit of a long shot. I think it is just a preference of when you decide. I mean, maybe a lot of women, and I'm sure everybody around this panel is just making millions in charge of billions, etc., etc. Does that person have any less or more than a male or otherwise counterpart to deal with that being their own money or something that they may set up with? No, the answer is no. Even within organizations, women are setting up businesses, setting up verticals, setting up functions, etc. So to me, it is not to do with risk aversion. It is about what I think I will bring in maximum value on. So just a personal view on the subject.
Okay, fantastic. Anshu, what would you like to add? As per Bhavna, it's just a matter of preference. Instead of starting a whole new venture, probably if woman wants to just join in a leadership position and start something new there, that it's a matter of preference. But still, the reality remains: we have very few women entrepreneurs.
So see, I don't want to address it as why are there not so many women who are entrepreneurs, but let's just break it down. And I want to just commend Nidhi. I love the thought about Soch Badlo, because I think it's all a mindset issue at the end of the day. And let me just first take risk at a very general level, and then I'll tell you what I feel about it at the corporate world. I think at a very general level, there are two types of risks. There is a reckless risk that you can take, and then there is an informed risk that you can take. As an individual, I would never want to be taking reckless risk. And the world that we live in at large, especially in the places that we are all in today as a region, if I decide to walk out at 11 in the night, wearing what I feel I should be wearing, which I could probably do in some other part of the world, it's going to be a reckless risk. Uh, is it something that I definitely say that no, that should be there? I should be independent. I should be able to do what I want to do, walk and talk and sleep and breathe and eat, drink the way that I want to do. Yes, by all means, it's all correct. But it's also a fact that I'm living in the society which does not think in the same way, and therefore there is a whole lot of offense and negative things that happen. And hence, it could be a reckless risk that I'm taking for myself. That's not about the society at large. So, I first want to comment again on the point what Nidhi made, which is absolutely certain that it's not just about a marketing statement, but about walking the talk and getting people at large educated so that the mindset of people change. And therefore, what we today have to think two times about, and what I'm now calling as an informed risk or a reckless risk, is not something that we consider. Now, let me talk about on the corporate side of it as to how do I see it. I unfortunately or fortunately have worked in a world and with set of people where people tell me that you're too daring on the way that you want to take risks, and I think that a lot of people that I work with are very risk averse in that manner of speaking. And again, I think it comes down to taking an informed risk versus a reckless risk in that sense. But I think the fundamental point, Sapna, that you may want to address, and I think Bhavana, Sarina, Nidhi may have a similar view on this, is the fact that actually these are stereotypes. And I think this is not just one stereotype, but there are a few others, and I'm going to name one out loud over here. That if I am assertive in the manner I speak, in the way I dress, or in a manner I conduct a meeting, or I take a decision, that assertion, if it comes from a gender like ours, is then viewed to be dominating, is viewed to be that, oh, she's really bossy, oh, she doesn't have a good personal life, and therefore she's venting here, and so many other manifestations of it. The same trait, if it was exuded by a male colleague, would be viewed as the guy knows what he's talking, he can take a hard decision, they don't shy away from taking hard decisions, and they're assertive, and they're all called positive leadership qualities. To me, these are stereotypes. And I think these stereotypes, the more we dwell on them, the more we kind of are um, letting it be taking some importance. I think the probably to me what's more important is to quantify it or to see the manifestation of it and address those parts of it, because otherwise these stereotypes will continue in it. So risk aversion, domination, way of speaking, way of conducting yourself, taking hard decisions, all to me are these set of stereotypes.
That's correct. That's correct. There are lots of biases. We may say that, there are no biases and have conversations on breaking barriers, glass ceiling, etc. But again, the truth remains, as you mentioned, that biases are there. What is considered positive in a male leader is considered viewed as negative for women leader. Sarina, let me bring in like what Anshu said, maybe the biases, maybe the lack of support at personal and professional level. Is it the reason that there are not many women who are entrepreneurs and would rather safely join a firm and then rise up in that organization?
Right. So I think your question is whether women are more risk averse than men, or they have
the question is, why don't we have many women entrepreneurs? Why the percentage globally is so low?
Yeah. So I think, according to me, there are two aspects here. A business person is a business person. If you have that desire to run a business, to start a business, and you have the talent and the quality and the tenacity to start a business, run a business, solicit for the funding and go with a very strong business proposition, then I think gender should not matter. Right? Then gender should definitely not matter, because it is the question of talent, it is the question of the tenacity, it is the question of the big idea that will make it, or the person making it with that big idea. So I think, like Anshu said, there are those biases and those stereotypes that would influence having that confidence in that woman, whether she would be able to run this business and take off this business. So I think that has to be overcome. And it is not something that only the woman has to do, but society at large has to change their mindset towards this. Having said that, it takes time to take a business off the ground. Okay. The businesses that you see today, even the new age businesses and the startups, have not started only last year or the year before that. It has taken some time for that business to take off, to make their mistakes, the initial mistakes, and then to become, to come to the fore, or for us to actually notice it as an upcoming or a rising business. So I think success and failure would, gender doesn't matter. Now, where the woman is concerned, like I said, it's got to do with confidence. It's got to do with your confidence to be, to have strong tenacity, to take the risk, to go and solicit for the business, to come up with a strong brand, business proposition. I think it takes a lot to build that for yourself, and I think it's just where business is concerned, you either have it in you or you don't have it in you. Having said that, you do run other people's businesses. I mean, we work in a corporate setup and we run somebody else's business. We use and we manage somebody else's money. There is risk there as well. But it all has to be evaluated, and there has to be a risk analysis that has to be done. And you have that support system in an organization or a company that would tell you, okay, you're doing the right thing, or this might be a good idea, or whatever. That similar kind of a support has to be provided to entrepreneurs as well, and especially if they're women.
And I think my takeoff from this is that we don't need to take all these figures, on their face, because as Bhavana said, within an organization, they could be starting a fresh new enterprise or fresh new business vertical, as Sarina also mentioned. It is the confidence with which they take it off, and it could be in any organization, set up organization, and they could be starting a new venture. And as Nidhi and Anshu mentioned, it's just the biases and the mindsets that need to change. That looking at women, that they are entrepreneurs in their own way, even if they are working within an organization or starting off with another organization. So fantastic. I think that kind of takes up that women are as much an entrepreneur whether they have their own venture or not. Let me bring, Sarina, you mentioned about startups. Now, again, India has the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. And again, they say only 18% startups are led by women. So, again, and as Nidhi, you mentioned that funding boards are mostly, men dominated. So, and they have their own maybe vague reasons of not investing in a venture or a startup which is being led by a woman. Is that the reason that the startups have very few women founders? Or is it the networking, which probably men professionals have more? What is your take on that? Why, again, startups, where the challenge lies for women?
Me or Bhavna? Who did you?
Anyway, anyone, Nidhi, you can start.
Okay. Thank you for that. So, somebody mentioned about glass ceilings. Glass ceilings are very, very solid for a woman. And, you would want to back somebody who you would know would stay on. I have felt it myself that when I've hired a young girl from college, at that time she's all raring to go and this and that, and suddenly she becomes marriageable age, and then she has to bear a child, and maybe she's not living in a joint family, and maybe for whatever reason she needs to quit. And it did cross, even as a woman, although I have been through it myself. Maybe I'm made differently, maybe I had a different ecosystem. Even as a woman, it crossed my mind that, my God, I've spent like hours nurturing her, years nurturing her, for her to just chuck up everything and walk off. And she told me that she feels she's happier when she's taking care of her kids. Now, I'm not taking away, I'm not a bad mother, by the way. I'm a very nice mother. But it comes to the fact that, fine, each one to his own. But imagine then the the fun committee thinking that, oh, she's all raring to go right now, but what happens tomorrow, right? with a woman especially, there's a lot of more constraints, and therefore that ecosystem, when we are bolstering each other up and saying, okay, you can do it, whether that means flex working hours, whether it be some, an office closer to home, whatever it makes it, but let's try and get the women to stay on, to hang on. And we are very good at that, right? But we just need to be given that little encouragement to say, look, go out, try that, I've got your back. Now that could be the ecosystem back home wherein the family is supporting. That could be an ecosystem in the office where the lady can talk to others who've been in a similar situation. But come on, there is a responsibility of the woman also to say that, you're backing me and I will stay in the race. you know that is what has really hit us. I've met so many of these PE guys, and they said that, it's very difficult. Oh, but what if these people get married? What if they want to have kids? I'm like, so? And they're like, no, it does happen, and it does happen. So the responsibility is both sides, not just on one side. There's a reason why these biases and stereotypes, besides the uh, education that came in from the West, that was forced upon us, besides that, there's a lot of more reasons that have caused these stereotypes to remain alive. We have given them that breath, so we need to work about it. Otherwise, our culture was the kind that even if a woman is kind of, well, biting your head, she's still revered, and she's still put on a pedestal. But where is all that aggression? We worship, most of our deities are the ones who are super aggressive, and we worship that. And yet we are thinking in our head, I can worship that one on a pedestal, but my daughter sitting at home cannot step out. Isn't that our fault somewhere?
Right. I heard the same thing from one of the HR, legal firm that, it's sad. I am myself, I'm a woman, but I'm looking for male interns and male associates because I know they will not leave work after a few years. Again, that's a sad reality. Bhavna, what do you have to say? Investing in women, where does the challenge comes in? Is it somewhere as we as women have to probably step up and show that confidence to others?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, yes, it works both ways. I think Nidhi very well said it. This is not just about men, and used the term earlier, in a patriarchal society. I mean, this is centuries of DNA in us, of roles, responsibilities, and we just don't eject it one day and start afresh. It takes a while to get over that and then move on, and it works both sides. So I remember in one of the organizations I worked for, we started wanting to implement what we call work-life integration policies, and I'm sure everybody kind of understands what that term means. And the point was, the trigger for it was about making the workplace more amenable to to gender diversity. However, the only reason we got those policies imbibed in the organization, and I won't even call them policies because they were not written down in stone. A lot of it depended and was influenced by the managers, which obviously, given that we were targeting gender diversity, meant we had majority men as managers. The only reason we were able to bring people on board on putting those in place was because we made them gender neutral. So whether it was about part-time work, whether it was about flexi hours, whether it was about taking time off when you needed to, and so on and so forth, we said this could be the need of the hour for anybody. And that's how we got the men to imbibe these policies, because they realized, it's not always about child care. It's always sometimes about elder care. And we do feel responsible, or at least most of us do feel responsible for elders, and anything happens. And you just need to stay back. Sometimes, even if there's no child around, maybe your spouse is too unwell for you to be somewhere, and you just need to be around. It's not like you're sitting by the bed trying to do something for him or her. So we kind of made this gender neutral, and that's how we started training the organization to accept that everybody has this need. Maybe we have seen it more with women than men, and so these requests may come to you more from women than men, but let's be amenable to that. Having
That's
said
right.
that, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Now, having said that, we also need to be, and now I'm going to take this to the other, like a very divergent point, but I think a lot of times women can also treat some of this as an entitlement, and that really bothers. So, if there are managers who shy away and actually sometimes, under the notebook make a little note saying let's not get a woman candidate for this role, is because they've just learned it the hard way that there may be some women who treat this as an entitlement, and it's like, no, I have to go, no, I have to do this. I understand you have to do it, but you also understand there is a job to be done, and while I'm paying you for the job, I did not necessarily put it payment for women and payment for men. I took it as a job description. So you also bear the onus of coming to the party and making your presence felt in the right manner. So to me, it has to be a balance. The responsibility doesn't just go one way. It is just because of centuries of patriarchy, we assume men have to take bigger leaps than women, but I think the work needs to happen both ways.
That's right. Entitlement and creating. It is a given that women are still considered the primary caregiver, and obviously they would have more needs. But then there should not be a sense of entitlement. And while hiring, also one of the organizations, they made a practice that when they are filling in their applications, there was no gender column there. So the whoever the hiring manager wouldn't know was the gender of the person applying, so that they could take decisions based on the merits. Anshu, how do you look at it? The startups that we see, the biggest challenge for a startup is always funding. And if a startup is led by a woman, then probably the challenge multiplies by another X times. How do you see that?
I actually don't see it that way. I think the only point over here, which both Nidhi and Bhavna have rightly made on it, is that the onus of it, if you have to, if it's your business idea or if you're in a corporate, either of the two, you have to be agnostic to your gender to be able to present something. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to say that, listen, this is what I want to do, there is probably an equal risk. It's just that there could be a visual risk or an optic or a stereotyped risk that is evident, that what happens if they don't want to do this, what they have an ecosystem to back up upon, or this is not the, if this fails, it's not the end of the world for them, they won't jump to the next idea easily, they have a backup system. Or just the fact, like somebody mentioned, that you could be getting married and so on and so forth. So there could be some very visible biases of this nature, but the reality of it is that I think if you parallelly look at it, there are enough number of startups that start and don't take off, or they don't take off to the point that they need to. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact alone, to do with that if it is a woman backed. I think the point that has been well made so far in this is exactly the same that I echo, that to do, to be able to take forward a business idea to its next level and its next level, you need to have a solid case for it. It has to stand on its own legs. You should be able to walk the talk. You should have the confidence and the resilience to be able to say, how are you going to take it from point A to point D? And you should have the mettle to give a person the confidence that you are the person who can do it. I mean, the reality of it is that I do know of enough people who have done startups who are male, and they've dropped it in the middle of the journey for whatever it's worth, right? So it's not something that is to be specific to do with the fact that it is because of this reason. The probability of the bias kicking in can definitely happen. I'm not saying that no. The ability to say that, will they, and I think the point that we've all not probably covered is this one thing that I have personally faced enough number of times, is that women are considered to be a little more emotional about things, and they're a little more thin skinned about certain things. And therefore, when the going gets tough, it is not just about the courage and resilience, it's also about that emotional quotient, that if I am thin skinned about it, then would I take it badly and just let everything, just drop everything and just say, listen, this is not what I can tolerate. Personally speaking, yes, I think um I am more emotional, but I also have developed a thick skin to not take a whole lot of stuff that comes my way. But there could be certain intrinsic or certain traits that are there, whether it is societal or it is just our personal upbringings that have reflected, or education, or the way that we have traversed through life. And that needs to stick out to be able to say that, will you be able to walk the talk? Is your case solid enough? Do you know what you're talking? Do you have the legs? Does it have its own merit? And then do you have the resilience to take it through? If there is a bias, and let's not, I mean, at least I say this often, I don't know how well this is going to be taken. The reality of life is that we live in this world where there are men and women. So when we say that we're going to go out to work tomorrow, the reality of it is that there is a male workforce. The reality of it is that that's what you're going to interact with.
That's right.
There's also a reality of it that there is a bias, there is a gender bias, right? So if I'm not going to be agnostic in the way of thinking and then address it, then I'm also constantly going to keep trying to fight something which I'm unilaterally fighting. I mean, respectfully, we have these conversations, but there is no male representation to say what does he or he feel about it. It because we'll all finish this and we'll go back into a workplace where we're going to be dealing with men, right? So the point I'm limited trying to make is that I think it, yes, there is a bias, but that bias exists in every sort of the industry. It exists in a walk of life. The
That's
fact is,
right.
there is going to be a male and women mix of the two. How do we take it forward to be able to say that, listen, yes, this is something that I'm going to be able to override this bias and get it through, also lies equally on us as much as the other person. I personally have not seen anybody say, no, I'm going to dump this idea. It is brilliant idea. It is a silver bullet to success. Everything that he or she is, that person is saying is correct. But you know what? I'm not going to take it through because I'm not. Like, even in a hidden way, I've not said that, no, I'm going to dump this idea because it's that. And I'm just going to take another second on, if you don't mind, to say another example, which has nothing to do with gender, but just to do with color of our skin. And I'm talking about two very close friends of mine. One is an Indian American and one is a Caucasian, so it's an American American. And they both were very successful corporate heads, and they left it at the ripe age of 55 to start their own business, which is like, oh my God, at 55, you're doing it, and blah, blah, blah. And I was meeting them the other day in the US, and these guys turned around and, they were going for this meeting to raise funds. And the Indian American had done all the paperwork, had done all the heavy lifting on that, and they were literally rehearsing amongst themselves that who's going to say what and who's going to not say what. And it came down to it that he said, "Okay, you're the one who's going to be speaking this. You're the lead person. You're the chief executive officer. I'm the co-chief executive officer. I'm going to back it up." And I'm like, "Why? Like, this guy knows it better, this story, than you." And he says, "No, it's just bought easily. We need to get this work done. That's just the way it's bought. It's bias. It exists. This is how it
It
is, right?
is.
So it can
Yeah.
exist in any place. And if they could figure out a hack to make it work for them, just putting it out over there, why not?"
That's a whole new conversation about, racial and the color
Sorry.
biases that we have. That's another, it's huge, and we will probably bring you together again for that conversation. But as you rightly said, yes, biases are there, and as I mentioned when we started, that men and women are different. They are inherently different, and they have their unique sets of strengths and weaknesses. Like you said, emotionally, women are a little thin-skinned, but they have strength in terms of being very mentally strong when the going gets tough. Sarina, let me ask you, in the corporate world, and also before that, let me share, you mentioned about we should have had men here to know their view, I did happen to speak to a male HR, and his point of view was that, women are very modest about their achievements. When we as HR are probably looking at promotions and all, we see women are very modest when they are listing their achievements as compared to men. They will, hype it two, three times or 10 times. Women would underplay it. So women need to blow their trumpet if they really are, and have to be go-getter. That is where, women can learn from men how to blow their own trumpet. Sarina, let me come to you. In the corporate world, again, if we see what is called as a proverbial broken rung, we have a lot of women at the entry level. As we go up, at the manager level, they become lesser, and then, the as the figures say, only 15% women in India are at the CXO level. How do we fix that broken rung? How can management groom those, women at the entry level to the mid manager level and then into the leadership?
So this is definitely something that needs to be addressed and worked on, and I feel it will need a lot of work and attention. But I'm just picking on that word that you talked about, trumpeting your achievements and trumpeting your. So there's as a marketer, there's a very nice kind of phrase for that, and it's called personal branding. And I think this is something that women do not do well. And simply because women don't like to brag as much as men like to brag. Okay. But I think there will be a time in your life, I mean, in a woman's career, and the sooner it is, it's better that you start working on your personal brand and your personal branding. You know who you are, you know what your capabilities are, you know what your talents are, and you know what you can bring to the business and the job. But does the world know that? And if you're going to hide under a table, and if you're going to not present it well into the outside world and in the market, you're always going to be shortchanged. So I think two things that women need to work on when they reach that managerial level is their personal branding, definitely. And today it's so easy. You have LinkedIn, you have all the social platforms, you have opportunities for networking and to be invited at different events. And the other thing is, I think, which definitely you need to do it yourself, because nobody's going to come and help you with this, is your executive presence. I think this is something that you really need to work on. You're not going to get it immediately. You're not going to get it, in a year's time. It's going to be something that you really need to work on. Emotional intelligence, executive presence, and your personal branding. If you work on these three things, people will start taking you seriously. I've seen it in my own life. People will, the way my demeanor has been and is, people don't take you seriously unless you work on these three aspects. So I think that's something that we really, really need to work on personally, and we need to encourage our girls. And that's what I keep talking to the girls when I go to Manipal and go to the other institutions and talk about why these things are very, very important. Also, women need to be encouraged and empowered and not meant to feel like they're making requests, or, they do sometimes feel they have to be grateful or obliged towards some request that was made for taking a day off or taking some longer time for their maternity or whatever. I mean, there was a lady in our organization whose son, there was something wrong with his legs, and she had to go on long leave in order to get him operated. And she decided to put in her resignation, and simply because she didn't want to feel obliged. She didn't want to ask for that time off. And simply because she got this appointment from this specialist after waiting for a very long time. And I went up to her and I said, just think about just think about one thing before doing that. I said, if there was a man who had to take this stand instead of you, how would he have made this request? What would his decision be? And she really thought about it. Her department head supported her, and she had just joined us. Okay, mind you, she just joined us 3 months prior, and she was a very talented landscape architect, the best I think you would get in Mumbai. They acceded to her request, and they gave her about 8 months off. and they took her back. I mean, the job was waiting for her when she came back. So I think if you don't ask, you will never
Yes.
receive. If you don't work on your personal branding, if you don't work on your executive presence, nobody else can do this for you. You may have the government laws, you may have posh, you may have a great boss, you may do whatever you want, equity and gender neutrality. But if you don't stand up for what you think you're good at, and you can bring to the table and you can fight for it, I think nobody else can help you if you don't help yourself.
That's right. I think very nicely put. Women have to stand up for themselves. No one else is going to do it for you. And the challenges we have
Yeah,
to
but
agree the challenge
nicely. But
nicely.
nicely. I do also
Like,
see women
yes,
who get
as
very
Bhavana said,
aggressive and
don't
who,
have
that
sense of
I am not
entitlement.
for women's lib and, this whole women cheesy thing. You have to do it nicely. You have to present your case well. You have to
Yes,
be,
yes.
they have to take you seriously rather than look at you as a troublemaker or an aggressive one.
Correct. So don't feel like us it is an obligation, but don't also have a sense of entitlement, like Bhavna said. So before we close, now I have to ask you all. You are women leaders, as I mentioned, in your own rights. You've been there, done that. One challenge, one learning, and your success mantra. Anshu, starting from you. Although you initially did mention your challenges, but that one top challenge, one top learning, and your success mantra that you would like to share with us.
So I think the challenge in this situation to me has only been when I've suddenly been discovered that, oh my God, this was a gender based issue that you were facing. And I actually never thought of it as a gender based issue then until I was like knocked on my head and said that, listen, you duffer, this is because of your gender. And it's probably because I've always believed in a very gender agnostic thought process. Uh, so there was a challenge which I never thought was a challenge. I thought it was a general life challenge, but it actually was because it was a gender. And like an ass that I am, pardon the language, I actually went up to this person who posed this challenge to me, and I said, "Oh, if there was a man in this place, what would you have done?" And he looked at me and he didn't know how to answer that question. The deal never happened. But I think it didn't happen because both of us were idiots in this entire thing. He didn't know what he was saying. I didn't know what I was saying. I presented it also badly and I got all riled up about it. But I think that one thing aside, the personal challenge that I've always faced is for the longest, and I've tried doing it better now, but I don't think that I've aced it, is that I have always worked harder than I should have or anyone else in my shoe would have. I've always questioned every decision of mine a couple of times to say, dude, if I'm going to do this, and I've done it. So I've got this really nice school facade that I'll put out over there, which is super confident that I've got it all under control. And inside there are like butterflies and frogs both going in. And I've taken that decision. But I would have probably kept myself awake the whole night to say, okay, I'm doing this. Am I doing it right? And I've done really hard decisions. Like sometimes letting go of people is one of the hardest things that you can do. And unfortunately, fortunately, in some of the spaces that I worked in, I've had to do that. It's not something that I'm proud of. It's a business. It's what was needed. But the point is that I've questioned myself 5 times, which I personally don't think. So this is me doing the gender bias here. I don't think a man in my place would have done that. I take it. I'm very hard on myself, and I sometimes think a lot more or work on it a little more. And the manifestation of it used to be a lot that I used to validate myself sometimes with what others are thinking about it. And that's a silver bullet to unhappiness in life. Just forget work, it's just a silver bullet to unhappiness. And I think that's something that one needs to definitely stop. What have I kind of gotten to, which I think is the thing that works, is number one, and the only thing, courage. Number two, resilience. And third, grace. I think if you've got these three as your friends, you've got yourself sorted in life. So between these three, I don't think I'm very good with grace, but I think I manage with the other two a little, and I get
Okay.
by.
Courage, resilience, grace, success mantra from Anshu. Bhavna, what had been your one challenge that you remember, your learning from that, and your success mantra that you will share?
Okay, all right. In that order, try to remember it. challenge, walk into a public sector or a government office years ago with one of my team members, and the officer I was there to meet just had a very difficult time even looking me in the eye in the conversation. And that kept derailing me. It's almost like if I'm looking at you here and speaking, and you are looking there because you are addressing my colleague for every question that I ask you. And I shared this with my team just yesterday. It can be very derailing because you're like, what's with you? I mean, why can't you just talk to me?
It's
Why
it's
do you
as
find
if
it
you
so
don't
difficult?
exist there. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost like, yeah, I heard your question and now I'm going to answer to the individual next to you. And the individual next to you is someone who reports to you. I remember the gentleman very fondly. He was like in his mid 50s. And when we came out of the meeting, he couldn't have enough of acknowledging how awkward he felt that his manager, who was the vice president, wasn't being looked at and responded to and almost being ignored in the conversation. And that I realized was what happens when you just haven't come across enough people who are very different from you and you cannot absorb it. You try to not distract yourself, and hence you look for this comfort zone, which in this case was this other individual next to me. That taught me the value of empathy. Of course, we still had the conversation, we still got done what we had to, but it came, I mean, I came out of it, and obviously, they both also had their learnings. This individual who got used to the idea, maybe like 2% of a senior woman leader, and that too, this was manufacturing we were talking about, and these are hardcore engines that we were talking about in equipments that go into mining, construction, etc. And here was I as a leader representing the company on that. So to me, the value of empathy with this individual and many more was something that I learned that, hey, just the way maybe it was a first for you. So, as a non engineer, I learned engines when I first walked into this organization. For this individual, it was about learning to talk, deal, negotiate, and do whatever is needed for your business with somebody from the other gender. And that empathy is something which we as women need to ensure we can be that persistent. I mean, Anshu, you used the word resilience and just love the way you kind of very succinctly described such valuable stuff. But that is something for me which is important, the value of empathy. So that was my learning. And of course, I think from a success mantra perspective, I would say a couple of things. One is don't wear your gender on your collar. You be a professional. Somewhere down the road, people will start dealing with you as that and not like you are a woman leader. No, I am a leader. It is like someone told me, oh, you are among the best women leaders. They thought they were giving a compliment, and I took it so hard. And I said, are you serious? I'm just a good woman leader. I'm not a leader. And that individual didn't know what to do. Ironically, was a male counterpart. And they're like, no, this was supposed to be a compliment. Didn't feel like one because there aren't enough, and I'm not sure what you're benchmarking me against.
That's right. CXO is just a CXO. There's no woman or man in that. Yeah.
Right.
And
And yeah, that would be it. Yeah. Thank you.
right, right. And as you rightly mentioned, let's not wear it goes for women as well. Let's not wear our gender on our sleeve and have empathy. I think in the empathy department, women are pretty strong. And sometimes it could just be no fault of anyone. It's just the way that person was raised or his mindset was.
Conditioned.
So
Yeah.
having that
We call it
empathy for that
conditioning, right? It's the way we all are
conditioning.
conditioned.
Correct. So, Nidhi, what do you have to say? Your one challenge that you would like to narrate, your one learning and your success mantra that you would like to share.
I think my biggest learning has been to uh, ditch the guilt of not being able to present in multiple places at the same time, ditch of wanting
Yes.
to give something to myself as well instead of just focusing on everybody around me, ditching the guilt of missing my daughter's first football match. It still hurts me, but yeah, but I think it's important for us to ditch that for ourselves and celebrate ourselves as well. Um, and like Anshu did put it, but grateful for the highs and graceful in the lows is something we really need to um, push across. I also learned that instead of being content with learning from the sidelines, it was good to be leading in the moment, even if you fail at it the first time or the second time, but you do need to lead in the moment. Um, and this conversation that we are having today, because I have two daughters, I make sure that this is not a conversation or a cause that I take only for one day and deliberate only one day and pause the rest of the year. I very, very consciously, whether it be with my friends or my lady colleagues, and with my male colleagues as well, I make sure that I keep reiterating the message that it's an equal opportunity for all. And because I have reached where I have, uh, by being an equal opportunity offender, it has to be passed on. The baton has to go on. The opportunity has to be passed around. And yes, a little more effort has to be made to bring up the women, uh, because of the kind of world that we live in, because it's factual. So yes, I would just say that my biggest challenge has been trying to have this conversation through the year on year.
That's right. I think you're very correct. It's just not one day that we should be talking about these challenges or conditioning or potential and achievements of women, but it's an ongoing. And what better way to groom the next generation but by setting up your own example in front of them? Maybe kudos to you for that. Sarina, let me come to you again. Your last word. What has been your one top challenge that you still remember, your learning and your success mantra that you have adopted in your life?
Yeah. So having said all this, and there's a lot of work to do. There's lots of work to do. It is a man's world. Okay, it is. There's a lot to do to make it equitable and to make it, for us to complement each other and work together. I have been shouted at in front of people. I've had things thrown at me. There was no posh in those days. There have been so many challenges that we faced in the 90s when we started our career. But I've always followed this principle that one man's opinion doesn't charter the course of my life. If it is not something that is something that I can take on board, I just walk away from those situations, and I don't allow it to affect me. And I say this to my team, and I say it to the girls that I speak to as well. I said, there are so many distractions around for us, especially as women. There'll be so many things happening in your company, in your department, in your role, in the projects that you do. But don't give up. Stay focused. Remember and keep in mind that you're there for a purpose. You're there to learn. You're there to add value. You're there to contribute. Stay focused. Don't get discouraged and affected by the distractions that happen around you. And I think that has helped me to stay the course. That has helped me not to give up and not to be affected, and understand that one person's opinion really doesn't charter the course of my life. And I think, I'll stand strong with that.
That's right. I think you very well put it. It's a marathon and not a sprint race. So, we just need to stay focused, need to be there, and probably take each day as it comes. Of course, as you said, yes, challenges remain. We cannot shy away with that. There's a long way to go. But as all our women leaders here have put it, it's been a wonderful conversation. And indeed, heartening to know that the scenario for women, as everyone agrees here, for women professional is changing, maybe very slowly, maybe gradually, but at least we are in the right direction. So that's a good part. Many companies in India and globally have intensified their search for senior women professionals to improve diversity at CXO level. Maybe it is driven by corporate or government mandates, or maybe just for improved staff retention, but at least something is happening, and all's well that ends well. But one has to read between the lines, I would say, and understand, as Bhavana also mentioned, that selection criteria has to be merit and not just the diversity factor. And in fact, because women also want not only gender parity, but gender equality. And with that, we come to the fantastic end of this conclave. Thanks to the awesome audience also for being here with us today. And thank you all our eminent speakers for making this edition of Realty Plus Real Talk so enriching, interesting, and not to mention very inspiring. I'm confident that we have many more such inspirational women professionals among us. These were just the few. So all out there, join us for the upcoming third edition of Realty Plus Women Icon Conclave and Awards, which is scheduled in May, and the nominations are currently on for those awards. And we will love to felicitate and recognize your accomplishments. The contact details will be there in the last slide, but I would like to leave you all with one lasting thought. As Sarina just mentioned, feminism is not a bad word, but it is also not about getting a favorable treatment. All that women are asking for is getting a level playing field. And if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring your own chair. That's what I say. So thank you all for this wonderful evening, and have a great weekend ahead, everyone. Thanks, Nidhi. Thanks, Bhavna. Thanks, Anshu. And thanks, Sarina, for being here and for that wonderful conversation. We will continue talking on this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.